The distress signal came at midnight, Galactic Standard Time. It traveled across the stars like a desperate scream, reaching every corner of the Galactic Alliance. On 100 different worlds, communication officers jumped from their seats. Warning lights flashed red. Alarms filled the air. The message was simple and terrifying. The Velen homeworld was under attack. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, watching the holographic display with cold fear in her heart. She was a tall woman, with silver hair and eyes that had seen many battles, but she had never seen anything like this. 3,000 warships. The number glowed on her screen like a death sentence. 3,000 Dreth Dominion vessels surrounded the peaceful planet of Velen Prime. Their weapons were charged. Their shields were up. They had come to conquer, and they had brought enough firepower to burn a world to ash. The Velen were not warriors. They were traders and teachers, scientists and artists. They had no army. They had no fleet. They had only their voices, crying out for help across the endless dark of space. "Get me a connection to every Alliance member," Yuna ordered. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "We need ships. We need them now." The responses came quickly. The Kirashi, a proud species of 4-armed warriors, promised 400 cruisers. They could arrive in 2 days. The Morvani, ancient beings of living crystal, offered 200 of their powerful battleships. The Telos Collective, a network of machine intelligences, sent word that 150 dreadnoughts were already on their way. More promises followed. The Alliance was responding. Ships were launching from a dozen worlds, all racing toward Velen Prime. It would not be enough. Yuna knew this. Everyone knew this. But they had to try. Then came the message from Earth. Lieutenant Murray, a young communications officer with quick eyes and a faster mind, received the transmission first. She read it twice, certain she had made a mistake. Then she read it a third time, and her face went pale. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The humans have responded." Yuna turned. "How many ships?" Mireille swallowed hard. "1, Admiral. They are sending 1 ship." Silence fell across the bridge. Officers stopped their work. Everyone stared at Mireille as if she had spoken in a language they did not understand. 1 ship? Against 3,000? It was madness. It was an insult. It was suicide. "Put them through," Yuna said. The holographic display flickered, and a human face appeared. He was a man of middle age, with short, dark hair and calm eyes. He wore the uniform of the Terran Defense Force, and his rank insignia marked him as a captain. His name tag read, Do-hyun. "Admiral Yuna," he said, nodding respectfully. "This is Captain Do-hyun, of the Earth vessel Achilles. We received the Velen distress call. We will arrive in 18 hours. Yuna stared at him. "Captain, our intelligence reports 3,000 enemy warships in the system. You are sending 1 vessel?" "Ah, that is correct, Admiral. 1 ship against 3,000? Captain Do-hyun did not blink. "1 ship is all we need. Please coordinate with our navigation officer for arrival vectors. We would not want to accidentally damage any Alliance vessels when we drop out of hyperspace." The transmission ended. Yuna stood in stunned silence. Around her, officers began to murmur. Some laughed nervously. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The humans had gone mad. That was the only explanation. The Kirashi ambassador, who had been observing from a corner of the bridge, stepped forward. He was a massive creature, covered in thick blue scales, with 4 powerful arms crossed over his chest. "The humans mock us," he growled. "They send 1 ship as a gesture of contempt. They are cowards who hide behind their words, while real warriors fight and die." "Perhaps they have a reason," Mireille said quietly. Perhaps nothing," the ambassador snapped. "I have fought beside humans. They are clever, yes, but they are also arrogant. They think themselves better than all other species. This proves it." The argument spread through the Alliance fleet. Some defended the humans, pointing to their history of strange but effective tactics. Others condemned them, calling the single ship an insult to the Velen and to the Alliance itself. The debate raged for hours, but no one could explain what the humans were thinking. Meanwhile, the Dreth Dominion was listening. Warlord Geth sat upon his command throne, surrounded by screens showing his vast armada. He was a creature of nightmares, 8 feet tall, covered in black armor that seemed to grow from his own flesh. His eyes burned with red fire, and his mouth was filled with teeth designed for tearing meat from bone. His species had conquered 100 worlds. They lived for battle, for blood, for the screams of their enemies. The Velen would be just another victim, another world added to the Dominion's endless hunger. But the human transmission had caught his attention. "One ship," Geth said, his voice like stones grinding together. "The humans send one ship against my fleet." His officers shifted nervously. They knew their warlord's temper. They knew how easily he could turn that rage upon them. "It is an insult, my lord," one officer said carefully. "They do not take us seriously." Geth was silent for a long moment. Then he began to laugh. It was a terrible sound, like breaking bones and dying screams mixed together. He laughed until his officers joined in, their nervous voices filling the bridge with ugly noise. "Let them come," Geth said when his laughter finally stopped. "Let the humans bring their one little ship. We will capture it. We will tear it apart piece by piece. And then we will broadcast the death of its crew to every world in the galaxy." He rose from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow across the entire bridge. "The humans want to play heroes. Let them try. I will show them what happens to heroes in the real universe. I will show them all. 17U. I will show them all." He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice reached 3,000 ships, heard by millions of Dreth warriors hungry for blood, warriors of the Dominion. "The humans have answered our challenge. They send one ship to face our might." "One ship." He paused, letting the laughter spread through the fleet. "When they arrive, we will destroy them. We will prove to the galaxy that nothing can stand against us. Prepare for battle. Victory will be ours." The Dreth fleet roared with approval. 3,000 warships, millions of warriors, all focused on a single incoming target. On the Alliance flagship, Admiral Yuna watched the long-range sensors. Somewhere out there, one human ship was racing towards certain doom. She did not understand why. She could not imagine what Captain Do-hyun was thinking. But in 18 hours, she would find out. Everyone would find out. 17 hours passed like a slow nightmare. The Alliance fleet gathered on the far side of the Velen system, just beyond the range of Dreth weapons. Admiral Yuna had assembled nearly 800 ships, the largest emergency response in Alliance history. Cruisers and battleships floated in tight formation, their crews ready for the battle ahead. But they were not enough. Everyone knew it. 800 against 3,000 was not a battle. It was a slaughter waiting to happen. On the bridge of the flagship, Yuna studied the tactical display. The Dreth Armada had formed a perfect sphere around Velen Prime. No ship could approach the planet without flying straight into their guns. It was a trap with no escape. "Any word from the humans?" she asked. Lieutenant Mireille checked her console. "Nothing new, Admiral. The Achilles is still on approach. They should arrive in less than 1 hour." "One ship," the Kirashi ambassador muttered. He had remained on the bridge, watching events unfold with growing anger. "One ship to save a world. The humans have lost their minds." Yuna did not respond. She had sent 3 separate messages to Captain Do-hyun, asking for clarification, asking for details about his plan. He had responded to none of them. Either he was too busy preparing for battle, or he simply had nothing to say. The hour passed slowly. Officers spoke in hushed voices. Sensors tracked the approaching human vessel, though at this distance, it was just a small dot on the screen. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. Then the Achilles arrived. The space near the Alliance fleet rippled like water disturbed by a stone. Energy readings spiked so high that several sensor stations overloaded. Warning alarms screamed. Ships rocked in their positions as gravitational waves washed over them. "What is happening?" Yuna demanded. Mireille's hands flew across her console, trying to restore the damaged systems. I do not know, Admiral. Something is coming out of hyperspace. Something big, something very, very big. The ripples in space grew larger. A tear opened in the fabric of reality itself. Blazing with white light, officers shielded their eyes. Some fell to their knees. The Alliance ships groaned as their hulls struggled against the impossible forces, and then the Achilles emerged. Yuna had expected a ship. What she saw was a monster. The Achilles was not a vessel in any normal sense. It was a moving mountain of metal and weapons, an artificial planetoid that blotted out the stars behind it, 40 kilometers long, 20 kilometers wide. Its hull was covered in scars from countless battles, each mark a testament to enemies that had tried and failed to destroy it. Weapons bristled from every surface, cannons the size of skyscrapers, missile tubes that could launch 1,000 warheads at once, energy projectors that glowed with barely contained power. The ship did not have weapons, it was a weapon, a machine built for one purpose and one purpose only. That is not possible, Mireille whispered. Her voice was shaking. Tears were forming in her eyes, though she did not know if they came from fear or wonder. That cannot be possible. No one can build something like that. The Kirashi ambassador had gone completely silent. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He had spent his entire life as a warrior, fighting battles across a dozen worlds. He had never seen anything like this. On the bridge of every Alliance ship, officers stared at their screens in disbelief. Communications channels exploded with chatter, shocked voices, prayers in alien languages, demands for confirmation that this was real. The Achilles filled their sensors like a sun fills the sky, overwhelming and absolute. Captain Do-hyun's voice broke through the chaos. It was calm, professional, as if nothing unusual had happened. Alliance fleet, this is the Achilles. We thank you for your response to the Velen distress call. Your bravery is noted and appreciated. However, we ask that you hold your current position. We will handle the Dreth from here. Yuna found her voice. Captain Do-hyun, what is that ship? The Achilles is a Terran defense vessel, Admiral, Prometheus class. We have been in service for approximately 40 years. I apologize for the gravitational disturbance vessels of our size tend to cause problems when exiting hyperspace. 40 kilometers, Yuna said. You built a ship 40 kilometers long? Yes, Admiral. The Achilles is actually one of our smaller planetary defense vessels. We have 12 like her in active service. Smaller. The word echoed in Yuna's mind. This nightmare of metal and weapons was small by human standards. What did their larger ships look like? She decided she did not want to know. On the other side of the system, Warlord Geth was not laughing anymore. His officers had detected the gravitational disturbance. They had watched their sensors go wild as the impossible mass dropped out of hyperspace. Now they stared at the Achilles on their screens, and their faces had gone pale with fear. What is that? Geth demanded. His voice had lost its confidence. What have the humans sent? What, my lord? One officer said, his voice barely a whisper. It appears to be a ship. But the readings do not make sense. It is larger than any vessel in our records. Its power signature exceeds our entire fleet combined. Geth studied the image on his screen. The Achilles looked like something from a nightmare. A beast of metal and fire slowly advancing toward his armada. It moved with terrible purpose. Steady and unstoppable. Scan it, Geth ordered. Tell me everything about that ship. The scans came back, and each new piece of information made the situation worse. The hull was composed of materials the Dreth had never seen before. The shields were generating energy fields that should have been theoretically impossible. The weapon systems defied all known physics. And then there were the drones. My lord, the scanning officer said, his voice cracking with fear. We are detecting over 10,000 individual combat drones housed within the vessel. Each one is heavily armed and appears to be capable of independent operation. 10,000 drones. one ship carrying an entire army inside it. Geth felt something he had not felt in decades: doubt. Real doubt. But he could not show weakness. Not in front of his officers. Not in front of his fleet. The Dreth lived by strength, and a warlord who showed fear would not live long. "It is just a ship," Geth said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "A large ship, yes, but we have 3,000 warships. We have millions of warriors. We will overwhelm them with numbers." His officers did not look convinced. Neither was Geth. But what choice did he have? To retreat now would be to admit defeat before the battle even started. The Dominion Council would have him killed. His family would be shamed for generations. No. He had to fight. He had to try. On the Alliance flagship, Admiral Una watched the Achilles move toward the Dreth fleet. It was like watching a giant walk toward an army of insects. The scale was so different that it seemed almost unfair. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why did they build such a thing?" Mireille had been researching human history during the long hours of waiting. Now she looked up from her console with understanding in her eyes. "Because they were afraid, Admiral. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other. Then they looked up at the stars and realized that the universe might contain threats far worse than anything they had imagined. So they built weapons. Weapons so powerful that nothing could threaten them again." Una watched the human vessel on her screen. It was beautiful, in a terrible way, like a storm or a volcano, something that inspired awe, even as it promised destruction. "They call it the Achilles," she said. "After a warrior from their ancient stories, a hero who was almost impossible to kill." "Almost," Mireille said. "Achilles had a weakness. A single vulnerable spot that brought him down in the end." "Does this ship have such a weakness?" Mireille studied her readings for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "I do not think so, Admiral. I do not think so at all." The Achilles continued its advance. 3,000 Dreth warships waited, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The Achilles moved through space like a predator stalking prey. It did not hurry. It did not slow down. It simply advanced toward the Dreth armada. With the confidence of something that knew it could not be stopped, Captain Do-hyun stood on the bridge, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on his screens. He was a man of few words and fewer emotions, trained from youth to command the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created. His crew moved around him with practiced efficiency, each person knowing exactly what to do. "Commander Unji," Do-hyun said, "open a channel to the Dreth flagship. All frequencies. I want every ship in that fleet to hear what I am about to say." Unji was a woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She had served aboard the Achilles for 15 years, and she knew her captain well. When he spoke in that particular tone, it meant something important was about to happen. "Channel open, Captain," she said. "They are listening." Do-hyun took a deep breath. Then he spoke. "Warlord Geth, I am Captain Do-hyun of the Terran defense vessel Achilles. You have surrounded the Velen homeworld with your fleet. You have threatened innocent people who have done nothing to harm you. This is wrong, and it will not be allowed to continue." On the Dreth flagship, Geth listened to the human voice with growing anger. Who was this creature to lecture him? Who was this soft-skinned insect to tell the Dreth what they could and could not do? "Human," Geth snarled into his communicator. "You dare speak to me of right and wrong? Your species is young. You know nothing of the universe. The strong take what they want. That is the only law that matters." "I understand your philosophy," Do-hyun replied. His voice remained perfectly calm. "And I am telling you now. You have 18 minutes to withdraw from Velen space. Take your ships. Take your warriors. Leave this system in peace. If you do this, no one needs to die today." Geth laughed. It was not the confident laugh from before. It was harder, angrier, the laugh of someone who was afraid and did not want to admit it. "You threaten 3,000 warships with one vessel? You are either brave or insane, human. Perhaps both." "I am neither, Warlord. I am simply stating facts. You have 18 minutes. This is not a negotiation." This is your only warning. Geth opened his mouth to respond with more threats, more insults. But before he could speak, his communication officer interrupted. My lord, the human ship is transmitting a data packet. It is being sent to every vessel in our fleet. What kind of data? It appears to be video footage, my lord. Combat recordings. Geth hesitated. Then he ordered the footage to be displayed. The screen flickered, and images began to play. They showed a star system, not this one, but another, far away. A colony world belonging to a species called the Rethkar. The Rethkar had been raiders and conquerors, much like the Dreth. They had built a massive invasion fleet of 5,000 warships, and they had decided to attack human territory. The footage showed the Rethkar fleet surrounding a small human colony on the edge of known space. It showed the colonists, frightened civilians with nowhere to run. It showed the Rethkar commander, demanding surrender. And then it showed the Achilles arriving. Geth watched in silence as the human vessel tore through the Rethkar formation. He saw the main cannon fire a beam of pure darkness that carved through warships like a hot knife through ice. He saw the drones deploy, thousands of them, swarming over the enemy fleet like angry insects. He saw ships explode, one after another, so fast that the eye could barely follow. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, nothing remained of the Rethkar fleet. 5,000 warships, reduced to scattered debris floating in the void. Not a single vessel escaped. Not a single warrior survived. The footage ended. Silence filled the Dreth flagship. 17 minutes, Captain Dohyun's voice said. You now have 17 minutes to make your decision. Geth stared at the blank screen. His hands were trembling. Around him, his officers stood frozen, their faces pale with fear. They had seen what the Achilles could do. They had seen how quickly it could destroy an entire fleet. My lord, one officer whispered. Perhaps we should consider silence, Geth roared. He could not show weakness. He could not admit fear. To do so would be the end of everything he had built. The Rethkar were weak. Their ships were inferior. We are Dreth. We are the conquerors of 100 worlds. One ship cannot stand against our might. But even as he spoke, he knew he did not believe his own words. On the Alliance flagship, Admiral Yuna watched the same footage that Geth had received. When it ended, she found herself unable to speak. Around her, officers stared at their screens with expressions of shock and awe. 11 minutes, Mireille said softly. They destroyed 5,000 ships in 11 minutes. The Rethkar were monsters, Yuna said. They killed millions before anyone could stop them. The humans stopped them, more than stopped them. The Rethkar no longer exist as a species. After that battle, they surrendered unconditionally. Their entire civilization gave up, rather than face the Achilles again. Yuna thought about that. An entire species, broken by a single engagement. An entire civilization, brought to its knees by one ship. The humans are terrifying, the Karashi ambassador said. His voice had changed. The anger was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like respect. I called them cowards. I was wrong. They are not cowards. They are simply so powerful that they do not need to prove themselves. One ship was mercy, Yuna realized suddenly. They could have sent more. They could have sent an entire fleet of these monsters. But they sent only one. Because one is enough, and because they did not want to frighten us. She looked at the Achilles on her screen. It had stopped moving, holding position between the Alliance fleet and the Dreth armada. It was waiting, giving Geth time to make his choice. They are giving him a chance, Mireille said. They are giving him a chance to walk away. Will he take it? I do not know, Admiral. The Dreth do not believe in retreat. They would rather die than show weakness. Yuna closed her eyes. She had hoped this crisis could be resolved without bloodshed. She had hoped that diplomacy might find a way. But watching the Dreth fleet hold its position, she knew that hope was fading. On the Achilles, Captain Dohyun watched the countdown on his screen. 15 minutes left. Then 10. Then 5. The Dreth had not moved. They had not retreated. They had made their choice. Chief Weapons Officer Tae-wan, Do-hyun said. Begin target acquisition. Tae-wan was a large man with gentle eyes, strange qualities for someone whose job was to destroy enemy ships. He nodded once and turned to his console. Target acquisition beginning, Captain. Enemy fleet is within optimal engagement range. All weapon systems ready. Drone bays? 10,000 combat drones ready for deployment. Flight control confirms all units operational. Do-hyun nodded. He had given the Dreth every chance. He had shown them what would happen if they chose to fight. They had ignored his warnings. They had refused his mercy. Now there was nothing left but war. All hands, Do-hyun announced over the ship-wide communication. Battle stations. Prepare for combat. The Achilles hummed with power as its crew moved to their positions. In the drone bays, 10,000 machines activated. Their weapons charging. Their engines warming up. In the gun turrets, targeting computers locked onto enemy vessels. In the engine room, reactors that could power entire planets pushed toward maximum output. The 18 minutes expired. On the Dreth flagship, Warlord Geth watched his screens. The human ship had not moved. Perhaps it was a bluff. Perhaps the footage was fake. Perhaps, incoming transmission from the Achilles, his communication officer said. Geth accepted the call. Captain Do-hyun's face appeared, calm as ever. Warlord Geth, your time has run out. You chose not to retreat. You chose to stay. Now you will face the consequences of that choice. We are 3,000 ships, Geth shouted. You are one. The numbers do not matter, Do-hyun interrupted. They never did. Goodbye, Warlord. The transmission ended, and the Achilles began to move. Warlord Geth made his choice in a moment of desperate pride. He could not retreat. He would not retreat. The Dreth had conquered 100 worlds by never backing down, never showing weakness. If he ran from one human ship, no matter how large it was, his reputation would be destroyed. His legacy would be shame. All ships, he roared into the fleet-wide channel. Attack! Destroy that vessel. For the glory of the Dominion. 3,000 warships responded. Engines flared to life. Weapons charged. The Dreth Armada surged forward like a wave of destruction, leaving the conquered Velen homeworld behind as they raced toward the Achilles. On the Alliance flagship, Admiral Yuna watched the attack begin with horror in her heart. The Dreth fleet stretched across her screen like an ocean of death. Thousands of ships moving as one, their weapons glowing hot. They are actually doing it, Mireille whispered. They are actually attacking. Brave, Yuna said quietly. Foolish, but brave. The Dreth opened fire. 10,000 beams of plasma energy streaked across space. Missiles launched from 100 different ships, their warheads seeking the massive human vessel. Kinetic rounds, metal slugs, accelerated to incredible speeds, filled the void between the fleets. It was the most intense attack the Alliance had ever witnessed, enough firepower to shatter moons. The Achilles did not dodge. It did not retreat. It simply continued forward, directly into the storm of weapons. The first plasma beams struck the shields. They splashed against the energy barrier like water against stone, spreading out in brilliant patterns of light before fading to nothing. More beams followed, hundreds of them, all striking the same shields. None of them penetrated. The missiles arrived next. They detonated against the shield barrier in a chain of explosions that should have torn any normal ship apart. The Achilles rocked slightly, absorbing the impacts, but its shields held firm. Not a single warhead reached the hull. The kinetic rounds came last. They struck with the force of nuclear weapons, punching into the shields with brutal efficiency. For a moment, just a moment, the shields flickered, then they stabilized again, stronger than before. On the Dreth flagship, Geth watched in disbelief. His entire fleet had fired everything they had. They had hit the enemy with enough power to destroy a planet, and the human ship was still coming. How? He demanded. How can any shield withstand that? His tactical officer was shaking his head, staring at his readings with wide eyes. The shields. They are not just blocking our weapons. My lord. They are absorbing them. converting our attack energy into power for their own systems. Every time we hit them, they grow stronger. Geth felt his blood turn cold. A shield that fed on enemy weapons. A defense that became more powerful the more you attacked it. Such technology should not exist. Such technology was unfair, the Achilles fired back. Chief Weapons Officer Taewan had been waiting patiently, tracking targets, calculating firing solutions. Now he gave the order. And the human vessel unleashed its fury. The main cannon activated first. It was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had seen, a concentrated beam of compressed dark matter that bent space itself around its path. The beam lanced out from the Achilles like a spear of absolute darkness, cutting through space toward the Dreth formation. It struck the center of the fleet. 200 ships vanished in an instant. Not exploded, vanished. The dark matter beam erased them from existence, tearing apart their atoms, leaving nothing behind but fading radiation. 1 second they were there. The next, they were gone. The Dreth fleet screamed in terror over their communication channels. Officers shouted contradictory orders. Ships tried to scatter, to escape the killing beam. But the Achilles was not finished. "Deploy drones," Captain Do-hyun ordered. The drone bays opened. 10,000 combat drones launched into space, each one a killing machine controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. They spread out in a vast cloud, their engines pushing them to speeds that no living pilot could survive. In seconds, they had surrounded the Dreth formation. The drones attacked. They moved like a swarm of metal insects, too fast to track, too numerous to stop. They targeted engines first, crippling ships and leaving them drifting helplessly. Then they went for weapons, destroying gun turrets and missile launchers with precise strikes. The Dreth tried to fight back, but their defensive guns could not hit the small, fast-moving targets. Ship after ship went dark. Engines died. Weapons failed. The mighty Dreth armada was being taken apart piece by piece, dismantled by 10,000 tiny machines that showed no mercy and felt no fear. On the Alliance flagship, Yuna watched the battle unfold in stunned silence. She had expected violence. She had expected destruction. But this was something different. This was systematic, professional. The humans were not just fighting the Dreth, they were surgically removing their ability to fight back. "They are disabling ships, not destroying them," Mireille observed. "The drones are targeting systems, not crews. They are trying to minimize casualties. Even now," Yuna said softly, "even in battle, they are showing mercy." But the Dreth did not want mercy. They wanted blood. Warlord Geth ordered his remaining ships to focus fire on the drones. Thousands of defensive guns opened up, filling space with a wall of plasma and metal. Some drones were hit, their small frames unable to withstand direct impacts. They exploded in tiny flowers of fire and debris. But for every drone destroyed, 100 more continued their work. And the Achilles itself was still advancing, its main cannon firing again and again, each shot erasing dozens of ships from existence. The battle lasted 40 minutes. When it was over, the Dreth armada had been reduced from 3,000 ships to less than 600. Most of those remaining were crippled, drifting in space with dead engines and broken weapons. The debris of destroyed vessels filled the void like a field of metal corpses. Geth's flagship was among the survivors, but just barely. Half his ship was dark, systems failing one after another. His crew was in chaos, officers screaming for help, damage reports flooding in from every deck, and the Achilles was still coming. "Warlord," his communication officer said, his voice barely a whisper. "The human ship is hailing us." Geth wanted to refuse. He wanted to spit defiance at the humans, to curse them with his dying breath. But his pride had finally broken. He had sent 3,000 ships against one enemy, and he had lost. There was nothing left but surrender. "Accept the transmission," he said. Captain Do-hyun's face appeared on his screen. The human looked exactly as he had before the battle, calm, professional, utterly untroubled. He might have been ordering coffee for all the emotion he showed. "Warlord Geth, your fleet is destroyed. Your attack has failed. Do you wish to continue fighting, or do you wish to surrender?" Geth stared at the human. In that moment, he felt something he had never felt before. Not just defeat, but complete and total helplessness. He had been the hunter for so long, now he understood what it meant to be prey. "I surrender," he said. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. "The Dominion forces surrender. We accept defeat. Your surrender is accepted," Do-hyun said. "You will withdraw your remaining ships from Velen space immediately. You will never threaten this world or its people again. If you violate these terms, I will find you, and I will finish what we started today. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good. Then go. Take your wounded. Bury your dead. And remember what happened here when your leaders think about starting another war." The transmission ended. Geth sat in silence on his ruined bridge. Around him, his surviving officers were weeping, some in grief, some in relief that they were still alive. The great Dreth Dominion had been humbled. One human ship had broken them. As his flagship limped toward the edge of the system, Geth looked back at the Achilles on his screen. It hung in space like a metal god, watching him leave, making sure he kept his word. One ship. They had sent one ship, and it had been more than enough. 3 weeks after the Battle of Velen Prime, the Galactic Alliance gathered for an emergency meeting. Representatives from every member species filled the Great Council chamber on the station known as Unity Point. They came to discuss what they had witnessed, what it meant, and what would happen next. The room was buzzing with conversation when Ambassador Sujin entered. She was not what anyone expected. The humans had sent a monster of a ship to save the Velen. Surely their ambassador would be equally impressive. But Sujin was a small woman, soft-spoken and plain. She wore simple clothes without decoration. She moved through the crowd quietly, drawing little attention until she reached the speaker's platform. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. But every being in the chamber listened. "Thank you for inviting me to address the council," she began. "I know you have questions. I will try to answer them as best I can." The Karashi ambassador was the first to speak. He was the same one who had called humans cowards, who had mocked their single ship. Now his voice held only respect. "Ambassador Sujin, on behalf of my people, I offer my apology for the words I spoke before the battle. I called your species arrogant. I called you cowards. I was wrong." Sujin smiled softly. "There is nothing to apologize for, Ambassador. Your reaction was understandable. We sent one ship against 3,000. Anyone would have questioned our thinking. But you knew," the Kirashi said. "You knew one ship would be enough." "Yes, we knew." Admiral Yuna stood from her seat. She had been honored with a place in the front row, recognition for her role in organizing the Alliance response, but she felt small in the presence of the human ambassador. Small in a way she had never felt before. "Ambassador," she said, "the galaxy is asking one question. Why? Why did humanity build such weapons? Why do you possess such terrible power?" Sujin was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of history that made the room fall completely silent. "Humans are not a peaceful species," she said. "We wish we were. We dream of being gentle and kind, of solving our problems with words instead of weapons. But our history tells a different story. We have spent thousands of years fighting each other. Wars over land, wars over resources, wars over ideas and beliefs, and sometimes nothing at all. We have killed millions of our own kind. We have invented weapons of terrible destruction and used them against ourselves." She paused, letting her words sink in. "When we finally reached the stars, we looked out at the universe and saw two possibilities. The first was a galaxy full of peaceful beings, species that had learned to live together in harmony. We hoped for this. We prayed for it. But we prepared for the second possibility." "Which was?" Yuna asked. "Monsters," Sujin said simply. "The universe might be full of monsters. Beings like the Dreth, who conquer and destroy because they enjoy it. Beings even worse. Things we could not imagine. We had spent so long being monsters to each other we knew exactly what monsters were capable of. The chamber was completely silent now. Every being was listening, understanding perhaps for the first time the fear that had driven humanity to build such weapons. So we built the Achilles, Sujin continued. And 11 more like her. We built ships that could destroy fleets, weapons that could crack planets, defenses that could withstand any attack. We did not want to use them. We hoped we would never have to. But we would not let ourselves be helpless. Not again. Never again. The Morvani representative, an ancient being of living crystal that glowed with inner light, spoke in a voice like chiming bells. You speak of fear, Ambassador, but what I saw at Velen Prime was not fear. It was controlled power. Restrained strength. You could have destroyed the entire Dreth fleet in minutes. Instead, you disabled them. You gave them chances to surrender. Why? Because we do not want to be monsters, Sujin said. We have the power to destroy. We have always had that power. But power without restraint is just violence. We want to be better. We want to be the species that protects, not the species that conquers. She stepped forward, her small figure somehow commanding the attention of every being in the vast chamber. That is why we sent one ship. Not because we wanted to frighten you. Not because we wanted to show off our strength. We sent one ship because one ship was enough to help. And we did not want you to fear us. We wanted to save the Velen, not terrify the Alliance. The Kirashi ambassador spoke again. You said the Achilles is one of your smaller vessels. How many ships do you have? How powerful is your fleet? And, Sujin hesitated. This was the question everyone wanted to ask. The question that kept Alliance leaders awake at night. The Achilles is a Prometheus-class planetary defense vessel, she said carefully. We have 12 of this class in active service. They are our response ships, the ones we send when allies need help. And your larger ships? Sujin was quiet for a long moment. Then, she spoke. We have 2 Atlas-class vessels. They are bigger, much bigger. We also have 1 ship of the Titan class, though we hope we never have to use it. Beyond that, I am not authorized to share details. The chamber erupted in whispers. The Achilles was 40 kilometers long and had destroyed an entire armada in less than an hour. What could a ship that made the Achilles look small be capable of? We do not want you to fear us, Sujin repeated. We want to be your friends, your partners, your protectors. If you will have us. We did not build these weapons to conquer. We built them to defend. Any world in this alliance can call for our help, and we will answer. 1 ship at a time, or more if needed. That is our promise. Admiral Yuna stood again. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wet with emotion. The Velen are sending their gratitude, she said. But they wanted me to share something with this council. A message they asked me to read. She held up a small device and activated it. A holographic image appeared of Velen Elder, her gentle face marked by years of wisdom. People of the Alliance, the recording said. We faced extinction. Our world, our culture, our children, all of it would have been destroyed. We had no way to fight. We had no way to run. We could only hope that someone, somewhere, would hear our cry for help. The elder paused, her eyes glistening with tears. The humans answered. They came when others hesitated. They risked everything to save strangers they had never met. They asked for nothing in return. When our children ask us about humanity, we will tell them this. In our darkest hour, the humans were the light. We owe them our lives. We owe them our future. We owe them everything. End quote. The recording ended. Silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, the Kirashi ambassador began to clap an human gesture of respect that he had learned just for this moment. Others joined him. Soon the entire council was applauding, hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all honoring the small human woman who stood before them. Sujin bowed her head, accepting the applause with quiet grace. When the chamber finally fell silent again, she spoke one last time. The galaxy wondered why humans sent just one ship. Now you understand. One ship was enough. One ship was mercy. One ship was our way of saying, you are not alone. You will never be alone again. And anyone who threatens the innocent will have to go through us first. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative. That is what humanity stands for. That is why we built our weapons. And that is why, no matter what darkness waits in the universe, you do not need to be afraid. She stepped back from the platform. Thank you. Far away, on the bridge of the Achilles, Captain Do-hyun watched the broadcast of the council meeting. His crew had gathered around the main screen, listening to Ambassador Sujin's words with quiet pride. When she finished, Taewon spoke softly. She speaks well. She speaks the truth, Commander Yoonji said. That is why it sounds so good. Do-hyun nodded. Through the main viewport, he could see the stars stretching out forever, endless and full of possibility. Somewhere out there, other threats waited. Other monsters lurked in the darkness, planning conquest and destruction. But humanity would be ready. The Achilles would be ready. One ship. When that was all that was needed. More ships. When the situation demanded. Whatever it took to protect the innocent. To defend the helpless. To stand against the darkness. That was the human way. And the galaxy would never forget it.